Alright, you should pause the video and go ahead and do the bell work assignment. So pause it and then you can do the bell work. Alright, so hopefully you pause this. They want us to factor completely. We have 4 terms, so we're going to factor by grouping. So group the first 2, group the second 2. So first group, what can I take out? I can take out a y. And if I take a y away, I'm left with y plus 7. Second group, I can take out a positive 5x, and if I do that, I'm left with y plus 7. Remember, this and this should match. If they don't, then you've done something wrong. If they do, then you're probably doing it right. Then we group our GCFs together, so y plus 5x times y plus 7, and that would be my answer. Remember, you can FOIL this back out or distribute it back out, and you should get this back. All right, number 2, 2x squared plus 14x minus 3x minus 21. So 4 terms, so that means I'm going to factor by grouping. Group the first 2, I can take out a 2x. I'm left with x plus 7. Second group, I can take out a negative 3, and I would be left with x plus 7, because basically you're dividing by negative 3. So a negative divided by negative is a positive, and a negative divided by negative is a positive. These match, so I'm probably doing it right. So 2x minus 3 times x plus 7. Again, you can always check your work by distributing it back out and seeing if you get the same thing back. All right, on to the notes. We are factoring complex trinomials. That just means that the a value is not going to be 1 anymore. Briefly talked about this before, but I'm going to show you how you do these problems. So go ahead and write down your target, your how, your why, and then when you're done, hit play. All right, so we are factoring trinomials, complex trinomials. So that is when your lead coefficient, that's the number in front of the variable with the highest exponent, is not 1. That's your lead coefficient. So when it's not 1, and you can't factor that out to make it 1. So I call this method the X method. Really, I just made it up. But going through the steps, I just make an X, and then I start to fill in these missing pieces. So we had 4 pieces. We're going to fill in 4 things. So at the top, I'm going to put the product of A and C. That means I'm going to multiply the value of A times the value of C. So that number is going to go there. The value of B goes in the bottom, so that would go there. And then on my left and right, they're going to be 2 numbers that multiply to the top and add to the bottom. So this is very similar to what we did before. We just are going to have to do an extra step to get to our answer. All right, so let's get straight to it. We've got 3x squared plus 10x plus 8. Your lead coefficient is a 3, so it's not a 1. That means we cannot do simple ABC. We have to do the x. So I'm going to make my x, and then I'm going to multiply the a times the c, and that number goes in top. 3 times 8 is 24. And then b goes in the bottom. That would be 10. So my next step is to say what 2 numbers multiply to 24 and add to 10. So multiply to this and add to that. Well, hopefully you know that would be 6 and 4. It doesn't matter if you put the 4 or the 6 first. This is going to come out just fine. So before, what we did was we found, oh, it's these 2 numbers, and then we just said, okay, x plus 6 and then x plus 4. That is a big fat no. We can't do that anymore because the a value is not 1. So you'd be tempted to do it, but don't do it. What you're actually going to do is you're going to rewrite this problem so it has 4 terms, and then we can factor by grouping. So we're going to take 3x squared, and instead of saying plus 10x, I'm going to rewrite it with my 2 new middle terms. So I'm basically taking that 10x and splitting it into 2 different numbers. They still add up to the middle number that we started with, but by doing this, this is going to let us factor by grouping. So 6x plus 4x is 10x. I have the same thing, but now I can factor by grouping because I have 4 terms. So group the first 2, group the second 2. So I can take out a 3x, and I'm left with x plus 2. 4x plus 8, I can take out a 4. I'm left with x plus 2. These guys match, which they should, so I'm probably doing it right. So 3x plus 4 times x plus 2. So I am going to check the first one. I'm not going to check every single one because I'll make our video really long, but I am going to check the first one. So distribute 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x times 2 is 6x. 4 times x is 4x. And 4 times 2 is 8. I can add these two together because they're like terms. So 3x squared plus 10x plus 8. That is exactly what we started with in the very beginning. So I do have the right factored form. Again, I'm not going to check every one, but you could check them if you needed to. So maybe on a quiz or a test, if you're feeling less confident, you check it. All right, let's go on to the next one. So we've got 5 for A, negative 17 for B, and 6 for C. Since A is not 1, we're going to do the x. So I'm going to multiply 5 times 6 is 30. And then negative 17 goes in the bottom. So you want two numbers that multiply to 30 and add to negative 17. Hopefully you know that is negative 15 and negative 2. A negative times a negative is a positive. A negative plus a negative is still a negative. So I rewrite the problem with new middle terms. So 5x squared minus 15x minus 2x plus 6. Then I can now factor by grouping. So group the first two, group the second two. First group, I can take out a 5x. That leaves me with x minus 3. Second group, I can take out a negative 2. That leaves me with x minus 3 because I'm dividing by a negative 2. So a positive divided by a negative will give me negative 3. These match, which is exactly what I want to have. 5x minus 2 times x minus 3. Again, you can always check your answer by distributing it out. All right, go ahead, pause the video and do number 3. All right, so hopefully you paused and you did number 3 on your own, and now you're just checking to see if you got it right. It's important, I say this all the time, that you actually attempt the problem because then you know where you get stuck or where you're making a mistake. If you don't try it, you don't know what you don't know. All right, so 3 times negative 10 gives me negative 30. And then there's always a 1 in front of our variable if there's not a number there. So there's a negative 1 there. So I want two numbers that multiply to negative 30 and add to negative 1. Hopefully we know that is negative 6 and positive 5. So then I will rewrite the problem as 3x squared minus 6x plus 5x minus 10. Again, the step that we're doing, we're just rewriting this so that we can factor by grouping. These are going to simplify to what we started with. So group the first two, group the second two. So I can take out a 3x here. I'm left with x minus 2. 5 and 10, I can take out a positive 5. And I'm left with x minus 2. X minus 2, x minus 2, those match. So 3x plus 5 times x minus 2. All right. So the first three problems we haven't had to do a GCF because there hasn't been a GCF other than one. When you get to 4, 5, and 6, we actually have a GCF. Now, doing the same method, that's what we're going to do. We don't have to take out a GCF. However, if you don't, you might end up with some really big factors, and it's just going to take you longer to figure out what the two numbers are that multiply and add to the middle number. So I highly recommend you always check for a GCF. So we have 36, 33, and 6. Well, what number will go into all those numbers evenly? Hopefully you said 3. So if I take out a 3, that would leave me with 12x squared minus 11x plus 2. So I'm still going to factor this the same way I did over here on number 3, and I'm gonna ignore the 3 right now. I'm going to come back to the 3 later on. So I'm just going to circle that, put him off to the side, and I'm gonna deal with him later. So I'm going to finish this problem here. So again, your a value is not 1, so that means I have to do the complex, so that make the x. So 12 times 2 is 24, and then negative 11. So two numbers that multiply to positive 24 and add to negative 11. Hopefully you know that would be negative 8 and negative 3. They multiply to positive 24 and add to negative 11. So I'm going to rewrite this problem. 12x squared minus 8x minus 3x plus 2. I'm going to factor this by grouping. So group the first two, group the second two. So 12x squared minus 8x, I can take out a 4x, and I'm left with 3x minus 2. Excuse me. The second group, I can take out a negative 1, and that leaves me with 3x minus 2. This matches this. I have to have that. And then I have 4x minus 1 times the common factor, 3x minus 2. Okay. Now you might be really tempted, and this is a common mistake, to be like, okay, this is my answer, and highlight box it in. However, we did something in the very beginning. We took a 3 out. We have to account for that in our answer, so you need to take that 3 and bring it down. So now we have the correct answer. So we take them out in the very beginning, and then we put them to the side and forget about them until the very end. But make sure you bring it down into your answer, because then you would be incorrect. And I'm sure if they had a multiple choice test or a question, one of your choices would have the 4x minus 1 times the 3x minus 2 without the 3. So if you took it out in the very beginning, I like to circle it or do something to make it so you remember, and then put it down at the end. All right, so we got 2 more. All right, so I have 4x squared plus 10x minus 6. 4, 10, and 6. Well, I can take out a 2 from that, so take out a GCF. That leaves you with 2x squared plus 5x minus 3. So I don't have 1 as my a value, so that means I have to do the little x method. So 2 times negative 3 is negative 6, and they add to 5. So two numbers that multiply to negative 6 and add to positive 5, that would be positive 6 and negative 1. So I'm going to rewrite this problem in parentheses. I'm going to deal with the 2 later. I'm going to deal with that at the end. So 2x squared plus 6x minus 1x minus 3. Factor by grouping because you have 4 terms. So I can take out a 2x. I'm left with x plus 3. I can take out a negative 1, and I'm left with x plus 3. This matches this, which is what I want. So I have 2x minus 1 times x plus 3. Don't forget about the 2. I need to bring him down to my answer. So I have 2 times 2x minus 1 times x plus 3. Okay, so pause the video. I want you to do the last one on your own, and then when you're done, hit play, and then check your answer. All right, so we paused the video, you did the problem, and now you're just checking. So 40, 10, and 5, they have a GCF of 5, so I would take out a 5 in the very beginning. So, oops, not 40 anymore. That would be 8. So we have 8x squared minus 2x minus 1. Remember, it doesn't disappear because you're dividing, so there would be a 1, not a 0. All right, my a value is 8, so I have to do the x method. So 8 times negative 1 is negative 8, and then negative 2. So two numbers that multiply to negative 8 and add to negative 2, negative 4, and positive 2. So rewrite the problem. 8x squared minus 4x plus 2x minus 1. Factor by grouping. So I can take out a 4x. That leaves me with 2x minus 1. And then I can take out a positive 1. That leaves me with 2x minus 1. These match, so I'm probably doing it right. 4x plus 1 times 2x minus 1. Don't forget about the 5 that you took out in the very beginning. That has to come down. So 5 goes in front, and I have my answer. 5 times 4x plus 1 times 2x minus 1. So if you do not take out the GCF in the very beginning, you're going to end up with really big numbers here. So if you did 40 times 5, you're going to end up with 200. So I'm just doing a hypothetical here. I would have 200 here and negative 10 here. That might be kind of difficult to figure out what two numbers multiply to positive 200 and add to negative 10. It's a lot easier when your numbers are smaller. So that's why we take out a GCF, because then we don't have to deal with these really big numbers. So whenever you can, always take out a GCF. All right, so that's it. Peace.